In the beginning, long before men lit fires in their hearths, long before cities rose and fell, long before even the stars took their place in the heavens, there was only chaos. Chaos was not noise or confusion as mortals might imagine. Chaos was silence. A silence that stretched in every direction, infinite, unmeasured, without boundary or edge. It was the silence of nothingness, but also the silence of possibility. Within that void there was no time, no day or night, no sound of rivers flowing or winds whispering through trees. There was only stillness. A stillness so deep it could cradle the thoughts of eternity. From this vast and unknowable expanse, the first shapes of existence slowly stirred. They were not yet gods as we know them, nor were they mortals. They were forces, raw, immense, eternal. The first was Gaia, the earth, solid and nurturing. She spread herself out wide, clothing the nothingness with mountains and valleys, fertile plains and dark caves, oceans whose depths had not yet been named. She was patient, endless, and motherly, holding within her the seeds of life that would one day flourish. Then came Uranus, the sky, who stretched himself above Gaia as a canopy of shimmering darkness, lit by the earliest sparks of light. Together, earth and sky formed a bond, a cosmic embrace that gave birth to a new generation of beings, the Titans. The Titans were vast and strong, born of both earth and heaven. Their bodies carried the weight of stone and the fire of stars. Among them were Oceanus, who circled the world like a river without end, Hyperion, who brought light, Themis, who carried the law, Mnemosyne, who held memory, and Cronus, the youngest and the most cunning. Cronus's eyes gleamed with a sharpness unlike his siblings. Where others looked with wonder, Cronus looked with suspicion. Where others admired, Cronus planned. It was Cronus who, urged by his mother Gaia, took up the sickle of flint and rose against his father Uranus. With one terrible stroke, he ended Uranus's rule and claimed the cosmos for himself. For a time, Cronus ruled as king of the Titans. His voice echoed across mountains and his shadow stretched over seas. But his heart carried unease, for the voice of prophecy reached even his throne. The prophecy spoke of his own downfall. Just as he had overthrown Uranus, so too would one of his children overthrow him. Fear grew in him like a restless shadow. Fear that thickened every time his wife, the Titaness Rhea, bore him another child. And so, in his fear, he acted with cruelty. One by one, as each child was born, he swallowed them whole. First came Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Cronus devoured her, and her spark of warmth vanished into his darkness. Then came Demeter, goddess of the harvest. She too was consumed. Then Hera, radiant and proud, taken before her eyes had opened to the sky. Then Hades, quiet and solemn even in infancy. And then Poseidon, Stormbringer, devoured as well. One after another, swallowed by their father's fear. Their small cries silenced. Their future swallowed. But the children did not die. They lived in the cavern of Cronus's stomach, trapped in eternal darkness, wrapped in silence. For Hades, this was the first taste of existence. His world was not Gaia's earth, not Uranus's sky, not the light of day or the song of rivers. His world was the inside of his father's body, a prison without window or door. He grew not in sunlight but in silence, not in freedom but in captivity. His thoughts were shaped by shadows. Imagine it, a child, divine yet confined, whose first breaths were swallowed echoes. Hades learned patience before he learned strength. He learned stillness before he learned power. For countless years he existed in this darkness alongside his sisters and brothers. Their words were whispers, their touches fleeting, their dreams unfulfilled. This is why Hades would one day understand the silence of the underworld better than any other god. He was born into it, shaped by it. The quiet weight of shadows was his first cradle. Rhea, their mother, wept for each child. She loved them, yet she could not protect them from Cronus. She carried her grief in silence until her heart grew heavy with despair. But destiny does not abandon hope forever. When her sixth child was born, the youngest, the one called Zeus, Rhea resolved to act. She wrapped a stone in cloth, presenting it as though it were her infant son. Cronus swallowed it without suspicion, thinking he had secured his throne once more. But Zeus was hidden away in secret, far from his father's hunger. While Zeus grew strong in secret caves of Crete, Hades remained in darkness. His mind wandered in silence, imagining things he had never seen. He dreamed of light though he had never known it. He dreamed of freedom though he had never felt it. He dreamed of balance though his world was nothing but captivity. And so Hades waited. Not impatiently, not with fire like his brother Zeus, not with storm like Poseidon. He waited with the calm of stone, with the quiet endurance of deep earth. He did not yet know it, but he was already preparing for the realm that would one day be his. The silent, shadowed kingdom beneath the world, where patience and stillness are the laws that bind all things. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly, deeply. And imagine yourself drifting into a world older than memory, a world hidden beneath the earth, a world that mortals have always feared, yet also respected. This is the realm of Hades, the kingdom of shadows. After the fall of the Titans, when Zeus claimed the sky and Poseidon embraced the sea, the third brother, Hades, received his dominion, the vast and endless underworld. Unlike the shining heavens or the ever-changing oceans, the underworld was still, constant, eternal. It was a place where the living did not belong, and where the dead journeyed to find their final rest. The very air of the underworld was heavy and slow, as though each breath was weighed down by centuries of silence. Imagine descending into that space, step by step, the light of the upper world fading behind you. The warmth of the sun disappears. The songs of birds fade into memory. Even the whisper of wind is gone. What remains is something different, something otherworldly, a quiet so deep it seems to hum inside your chest, a darkness that does not frighten but lulls, wrapping you in its embrace. Hades stood at the threshold of this kingdom when it was first given to him. His eyes, accustomed to the brilliance of Olympus, adjusted slowly to the dim, muted glow of his new realm. There were no blazing stars, no crashing waves, no golden fields of harvest. Instead, there was shadow, stone, and an endless expanse stretching far into mystery. And yet there was also order. For even death, Hades realized, required structure. Even death demanded a ruler. At the entrance to his domain, Hades placed immense gates of black iron. They towered higher than the tallest palace columns of Olympus, their bars thick and unyielding. Around them coiled serpents carved in metal, their eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Beyond those gates stretched the path that every soul, sooner or later, would take. Guarding these gates was a creature unlike any other, Cerberus, the three-headed hound. His fur was dark as night, his eyes gleamed red like smoldering embers, and his teeth shone sharp as daggers. Each head watched a different direction, ensuring that no living soul would wander in and no dead soul would wander out. His growl was deep and resonant, echoing like thunder trapped beneath the earth. But though Cerberus was fierce, he was not cruel. To Hades he was a loyal companion, a protector, and a reminder that even the most frightening guardians can serve a purpose in keeping balance. Mortals trembled at the thought of him, yet within the kingdom of Hades, Cerberus was as essential as the sun is to the world above. The underworld was not a barren wasteland. It was threaded by 5 ancient rivers, each flowing with meaning, each carrying its own essence of existence and death. The first was the Styx, the river of Oz. Dark and unyielding, it wound through the underworld like a ribbon of liquid iron. Its waters were sacred, even the gods of Olympus swore upon it, for to break an oath made by the Styx was to invite eternal ruin. Imagine its flow, heavy, slow, endless, its surface reflecting no light, swallowing all brightness within. The second was the Acheron, the river of sorrow. Here the newly dead gathered, their voices murmuring like the wind through hollow reeds. The sound was neither scream nor song, but a low, endless murmur of loss. Souls stood upon its banks, waiting to cross, clutching the memories of the world they had left behind. Then came the Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Its waters were pale, shimmering with a ghostly light. Those who drank from it lost all memory of their mortal lives. For some this was a mercy, to forget pain, to forget regret. For others, it was a tragedy, to lose the laughter, the love, the names of those they once held dear. Still, all who passed through the underworld eventually touched Lethe, for in forgetting they found peace. The fourth was the Phlegethon, the river of fire. It burned with bright flames yet did not consume. Its waters hissed and roared, twisting like molten serpents, lighting the caverns of the underworld with an eerie red glow. This was the river of punishment, its flames licking at the guilty, its light reminding all who saw it of the cost of cruelty and betrayal. And finally the Cocytus, the river of wailing. Its waters were icy, cold as the void itself, and its flow was accompanied by the cries of the damned. The sound was not loud, but constant, like a whisper of grief that never ended. To stand by Cocytus was to feel the weight of sorrow pressing into your bones, urging you to bow your head in mourning. Together, these 5 rivers wove the fabric of the underworld, their currents shaping its landscapes, its caverns and its borders. They were not merely waters. They were the very veins of the realm, each carrying a part of death's essence, each reminding souls that their journey was both ending and beginning. At the banks of the Acheron stood Charon, the ferryman. Wrapped in a tattered cloak, his face hidden in shadow, he guided souls across the river in his small wooden boat. His eyes, dim and sunken, glowed faintly with the memory of countless crossings. His hands, bony and weathered, gripped the oar with steady patience. Souls approached him silently, each carrying the payment for passage, a coin placed in their mouths at burial by those who loved them. Without this coin, Charon would not row, and the soul would wander endlessly along the banks, longing for the crossing they could not afford. Imagine the scene, a line of pale figures stretching into eternity, each waiting, each stepping forward in turn. Charon never rushed, never slowed. His boat rocked gently upon the dark waters, carrying passengers one after another endlessly without rest. His was a task eternal, a rhythm as steady as the beating of a heart, a lullaby sung in silence. To some, the ferryman was frightening. To others, he was merciful, for he carried them toward what lay beyond. But to Hades, Charon was indispensable, a servant not of cruelty but of necessity. Without him the order of death would falter. And so, Hades honored him, granting him his place for all time. Once across the river, the souls entered the great halls where their fates were decided. Here stood the 3 judges of the underworld, Minos, Rhadamanthus and Aeacus. Minos, once a king of Crete, was stern and thoughtful. He listened to each soul with care, weighing their deeds with the precision of a ruler who had known both justice and ambition. Rhadamanthus, his brother, was unyielding. He judged swiftly, with sharp eyes that pierced through lies and excuses. His voice was firm, like stone striking stone, leaving no room for doubt. Aeacus, the third, was patient and compassionate. He weighed mercy as much as justice, listening for the quiet truths hidden beneath sorrow. He was the judge who balanced the others, ensuring that neither cruelty nor leniency tilted the scales unfairly. Together the three listened to every soul. They measured not only actions but intentions. They saw through masks, through illusions, through the words that mortals once spoke to hide themselves. Before them all souls were bare, revealed in full. And when judgment was given, the soul was sent onward, to the dark depths of Tartarus, to the gentle fields of Asphodel, or to the shining meadows of Elysium. Each destination was final, yet each carried its own kind of peace. Beyond the judgment halls, far deeper than most mortals could imagine, lies Tartarus. To call it a prison would not capture its essence. To call it a pit would be too simple. Tartarus was more than a place, it was a concept, a boundary between the possible and the impossible. It was darker than the deepest cave, heavier than the silence of a tomb. Imagine descending, farther and farther, each step colder, each breath harder. The walls no longer seemed like stone but something denser, as if the very air pressed against the body. Here the defeated titans were bound. Chains of unbreakable adamant wrapped around their massive forms, glowing faintly with divine fire. Their roars echoed in the abyss, not with rage alone but with the endless weight of hopelessness. Imagine those cries, deep, resonant, rolling through Tartarus like distant thunder, and then fading again into silence. Among the prisoners was Cronus, once the mighty ruler of the cosmos. Now he sat in shadow, his crown broken, his sickle shattered. Around him the chains pulsed with ancient magic, sealing his power away. He did not rage as the others did. He waited, silent, brooding, his eyes fixed upon nothing, or perhaps upon eternity itself. The ground of Tartarus was not soil but jagged rock, sharp and treacherous. Rivers of flame from the Phlegethon cut through the darkness, lighting the vast prison in flickers of red and gold. Each burst of fire revealed faces carved into the abyss itself, screaming, whispering, weeping. Some said these were the souls of those who had fallen too deep, lost even beyond judgment. And yet, Tartarus was not chaos. Hades ruled even here. He placed guardians at its gates, the Centimanes, the 100-handed giants, each with 50 faces, each voice roaring at once. Their presence was overwhelming. Imagine standing before such beings, their shadows stretching across the abyss, their many arms moving like trees swaying in a storm. None escaped their gaze, none passed their watch. Tartarus was punishment, yes, but it was also order. It reminded gods and mortals alike that power without balance leads only to downfall. Above Tartarus, where the air grew lighter and the rivers flowed more gently, stretched the Asphodel meadows. This was the place where most souls arrived after judgment. Not heroes, not villains, but ordinary mortals who had lived ordinary lives. Picture a vast plain, endless and quiet, covered in pale, ghostly flowers. Their petals glowed faintly in the dim light, swaying though there was no breeze. The ground was soft, cool, comforting beneath bare feet. Here, souls wandered without fear, their shapes gentle shadows of what they once had been. They spoke softly to one another, sharing fragments of memory, telling stories of lives that seemed already like dreams. Sometimes they forgot, their voices fading into silence, their faces indistinct, their steps aimless. Yet the Asphodel meadows were not sad. They were calm, serene, steady. Imagine walking among those fields, the pale blossoms brushing against your hands, the air carrying a faint fragrance like rain on stone. There was no pain here, no punishment. There was simply eternity, lived slowly, softly, without hurry. The Greeks believed that most mortals would come here, for most lives are not filled with great heroism or great evil. And so Asphodel became the home of the many, the resting place of countless generations, stretching farther than the eye could see. The sound of the meadows was not silence but a kind of murmur, voices blending together, like the sound of waves in the distance, like the whisper of leaves in the wind. It was the music of lives remembered, repeated, then gently forgotten. Hades often walked these fields. Though many mortals feared him, the souls of Asphodel welcomed his presence. For he was not their tormentor but their caretaker. He moved among them like a shadow among shadows, steady, calm, ensuring that peace remained. Here the heroes of old dwelt. Those who had lived lives of exceptional virtue, or who had been chosen by the gods, found eternal rest in Elysium. They did not wander aimlessly nor sit in sorrow. They lived, truly lived, in bliss. Imagine wide meadows where music drifted in the air, where rivers ran clear as crystal, their waters cool and sweet. Imagine groves of trees heavy with fruit that never spoiled, vineyards where the grapes never withered, orchards where the blossoms never fell. Imagine laughter, soft, joyous, eternal, echoing across the fields as heroes spoke of their deeds, or simply lay in the grass, gazing at the glowing horizon. Their bodies were restored to a gentle strength, the soreness of battle gone, the chill of age dissolved, the weight of memory softened into gold. Time did not vanish here, it simply forgot to wound. The day did not rush. The evening did not threaten. The twilight light, ever warm, ever kind, smoothed the edges of thought until only contentment remained. Some souls sang old songs and found that their voices were suddenly true. Some painted the colors they could never capture in life and discovered the sky itself offered them a canvas. Some told stories beneath cypress trees while a breeze, steady and sweet, turned their words into music. Others simply walked, hand in hand with those they had lost and found again, not counting steps, not measuring hours. In Elysium, the great thinkers debated gently without pride, the brave sparred without blood, the faithful harvested without toil. Well-being here was not loud, it was quiet, dignified, deep. Every breath was a kind of blessing. Every glance a reunion. Every blade of grass was a small promise kept. And within Elysium, there were paths that led farther still, to shores that gleamed like polished pearl, to gardens whose petals glowed faintly like stars fallen into the grass. Some called these shores the Isles of the Blessed, a rarer paradise reserved for those who, through cycles of life and virtue, had earned the gentlest corner of eternity. There the sea spoke in whispers and the hills kept the secrets of joy. No lament was heard in these lands. No hunger, no fear, no envy. The souls here did not forget who they had been. Rather, their memories ripened into gratitude. Pain lost its sting, regret lost its bite. What remained was a clear stream of meaning, and in that stream they bathed and in that stream they rested. Elysium did not boast. It simply was the soft answer to a lifetime's aching question. Between the gates of iron and the meadows of judgment lay Erebus, a region of deep shadow, gentle and dense, like velvet laid upon stone. Erebus was not punishment. It was a passage, a hush, where newly arrived souls adjusted to the weight of silence and the slow, careful breathing of the realm below. Here the air held the scent of cool rock and distant rain. The ground was firm and level, a path without threat, a corridor without walls. Souls moved as if remembering how to walk, how to be. In that walking, they released their last clinging to sunrise, their last gripping of doorways left ajar. Erebus taught them to walk without leaning on the world above. Night was queen here, but not the night that frightens, rather the night that soothes. The constellations were not stars but faint, pale stones embedded in the cavern roof, glowing like memories that refused to be lost. Their light did not lead, it comforted. Souls paused beneath them and felt, for the first time since dying, the peace of simply existing. Somewhere within Erebus, in a chamber with a ceiling low and the floor soft as moss, stood the halls of night. The goddess Nyx, older than Olympus, older even than many names, was said to drift here like breath on a mirror. Hypnos, sleep, moved beside her, his hands cool, his eyelids half closed. Thanatos, gentle death, stood nearby, not as an enemy, but as a final companion who needed no praise and asked no favor. Those who had crossed in terror found their terror covering its face. Those who had crossed in sorrow found their sorrow loosening its grip. In the halls of night, the world above became a book gently closed. Near the edge of Erebus rose two ancient arches, simple and austere, the gate of horn and the gate of ivory. The poets whispered that true dreams passed through horn and false dreams through ivory, but in the underworld their meaning was softer, subtler. Through the gate of horn drifted memories that healed, moments of kindness, faces of loved ones, scents of kitchens and spring fields, scenes in which the soul recognized itself and grew calm. Through the gate of ivory wandered the light mirages, things that never were, things that might have been, things that let the soul practice the art of letting go. Morpheus moved between them like a quiet custodian, shaping dreams into boats and setting them upon still waters. Souls slept and woke and slept again, not bound to clocks but to comfort. In this rhythm, they learned what even the living sometimes forget, that rest is an honorable thing, that gentleness is not weakness, that silence can cradle the heart. Though much of the underworld was calm, justice remained vigilant. From caverns steeped in old smoke, the Erinyes, the Furies, would rise when oaths were broken grievously, when blood cried for answer, when a vow sworn by the Styx had been shattered beyond repentance. They were not monsters to Hades, they were instruments of balance. Their hair seemed like knotted storms, their eyes like coals without ash. Yet when they moved through the halls, even they stepped softly as if mindful of the realm's deep quiet. The Styx herself, dark and absolute, wound not far from their caverns. Gods and mortals alike swore upon it, because nothing turned a careless tongue sober as the Styx's weight. Here an oath was not sound, it was stone. It settled. It stayed. If a god swore falsely, the penalty was not a shout, it was a season of stillness, a span of divine weakness, a quiet forced upon a voice too long accustomed to thunder. If a mortal broke solemn vow, the judges heard, the Furies listened, and an answer was fashioned not out of rage but out of necessity. In this way the underworld taught even the highest, that words matter, that promises are not feathers, that truth has the gravity of earth. Within a valley of black marble veined with silver lay the palace of Hades. Its doors were tall and plain. Its columns did not boast. The floors were polished obsidian, reflecting torchlight like sleeping water. The ceilings were high enough for silence to gather, and the halls were wide enough for calm to be a companion. In the great hall, a dais of dark stone held two thrones. One, heavier in line, belonged to Hades. The other, not lesser but different, waited for Persephone, a space prepared with patience, with the understanding that spring returns to every story, even to the ones told beneath the earth. Her tale will come later, for now the throne rests like a promise. Around the hall, alcoves held simple treasures. A pomegranate carved in onyx, its seeds picked out with faint red, a small bowl filled with coins surrendered to Charon, a lyre of shadow wood strung with silver wire, left by a visitor whose song once convinced even stones to listen. Nothing glittered loudly. Everything meant something. Servants moved without hurry, silent shades whose kindness was in their timing. Torches did not sputter, they breathed. Even the air seemed taught to remain steady, the way one learns to carry a cup filled to the brim. When Hades walked the corridors, he did not drag a cloak of fear behind him. He carried a mantle of order. Souls felt it the way a child feels a parent's hand, firm, fair, guiding without crushing. The living called him dread. The dead called him necessary. Though no sun rose and set, the underworld had its own kind of seasons, shifts of mood and music that turned like pages. There was a season when the Lethe ran more softly as if teaching forgiveness. There was a season when the Phlegethon flared brighter, reminding even the just that actions ripple. There was a season when the asphodel meadows bloomed more pale, and a season when Elysium's twilight seemed to lean nearer, bathing laughter in honeyed gold. When Persephone would return, the halls warmed. When she departed, the hush deepened. But even in deep hush, there was never emptiness, only a different song, a slower rhythm. The underworld did not wither, it breathed on another meter. The living measure life by noise, by markets, by storms, by choruses of birds. The underworld measured being by footsteps. The soft shuffle of the newly arrived. The even tread of judges crossing a threshold. The quiet prowl of Cerberus, circling the gates like a planet around a sun. Sometimes, when the meadows were very still, you could hear the faintest patter, a rain of tiny sounds, coins settling in bowls, reeds touching one another in low wind, gravel turning under Charon's boat as it nudged the shore. None of these asked attention. They offered presence. To narrate the underworld is to narrate listening. The longer one listens, the more one hears that nothing here is empty, and nothing here is cruel for the sake of cruelty. Punishment is not sport, it is boundary. Reward is not vanity, it is gratitude. Rest is not escape, it is completion. There were stories, quiet ones, of souls who, after long rest, felt a call not of punishment, not of reward but of becoming. For them, beyond the meadows of asphodel and not far from the gate of horn, stood an arch of pale stone, simple and unadorned. Through it, the Lethe ran in a gentler branch, clear as winter light. The choice was never forced. A guide would merely speak. If you drink, you will forget enough to begin anew. If you refuse, you may remain. Both are honored. Some drank and returned to the world above, not as a debt but as a desire, to try again, to learn again, to love again. Others stayed, content to walk the slow paths, to listen to songs, to rest without the ache of needing. Hades did not command this choice. He protected the space in which the choice could be made. That was his way, not to push but to keep the lanes open, to guard the crossings, to hold the center. And so the underworld, often feared, reveals itself, not a chaos of torment but a structure of meanings. Gates that keep order. Rivers that teach remembering and forgetting. Judges that weigh, not to crush but to clarify. Fields for rest, fields for joy, depths for consequence. A palace for a king whose crown is duty. Even the Furies, terrible as storms, are storms that know their shores. Even Tartarus, deep as remorse, exists to place down what cannot live in the light. Even Elysium, bright as the last moment before sleep, lives not to tempt but to honor. Hades, who learned patience in the belly of Cronus, who learned stillness in a darkness without doors, rules without shouting. He accepts what arrives. He returns what must go. He keeps faith with the one law that every creature eventually learns, that all things come home. Breathe in and out. You have walked the abyss and the meadows, the twilight and the hush. You have listened to the rivers and stood beneath the halls of night. The kingdom of Hades is not a place of panic. It is a place of completion, of scales balanced, of songs softened, of endings held gently. When you are ready, we can drift into Block 3, where the daily rhythm of the realm unfolds, processions of souls, the etiquette of shadow, the courtyards of Persephone, and the small mercies that make eternity livable. Every realm has its rhythm. The world above has days and nights, seasons and years, rains that come and rivers that rise. The underworld has no sunrise, no sunset, no turning of the calendar. And yet, it has a rhythm all its own. Souls arrive in steady currents, guided by Charon's oar. Some cling to the memory of breath, others step as if they were sleepwalkers, already halfway into forgetting. They gather at the gates, they wait in slow lines, they whisper to one another in voices softer than dust falling on stone. Cerberus paces at the threshold. His 3 heads move like planets in orbit, one sniffing the air, one watching the shadows, one lowering gently toward the ground as if listening. He does not roar unless he must. More often he rumbles, a deep vibration that shakes the air like distant thunder. That sound is not threat, it is reminder. Inside, the flow of souls moves like a tide, sometimes fuller, sometimes thinner, never ceasing. Judges take their places, their voices balanced, their gestures measured. They do not rush. Eternity requires no haste. Each soul is seen. Each story is weighed. When judgment is passed, souls drift outward, some to the asphodel meadows, some to the Elysian glow, a few to the dark plunge of Tartarus. The flow is steady, constant like breathing. It is the breathing of the underworld. At the heart of the realm, near the palace of Hades, lie courtyards where stone paths wind through gardens. These gardens are not like those above. Their trees do not reach for the sun. Their blossoms do not burst in wild color. They are pale, silver, muted. Yet they glow gently like moonlight caught in petals. When Persephone is present, the gardens bloom more fully. The flowers open wider, their scents softer but stronger, filling the courtyards with a fragrance like warm earth after rain. When she departs to the upper world, the blossoms close and the gardens rest in hushed stillness. Shades walk these paths not speaking but listening. They feel the shift of season even here in a land without sun. The courtyards remind them that even in shadow, there is change, there is rhythm, there is life that turns in circles rather than ending in walls. Hades himself often walks beside Persephone in these gardens. Their steps are slow, unhurried. They speak little, for words are not always needed. The silence between them is not emptiness, it is understanding. Where she brings renewal, he brings constancy. Where she offers blossoms, he offers soil. Together they complete the cycle. Few imagine it, but there are places in the underworld where souls exchange memories like tokens. Not markets of gold or grain, but markets of remembrance. Picture a long hall carved into black stone, its ceiling low, its floor smooth as glass. Shades gather here, holding memories like faint lights cupped in their hands. They offer them to one another, not for profit but for sharing. One soul gives a memory of a wedding day, laughter, music, a garland of flowers. Another offers a memory of a rainstorm, the scent of wet soil, the sound of thunder rolling across hills. These memories do not fade when shared. Instead they echo. One memory becomes many, carried like candles into the dim air. A soul that never knew the sea taste salt on the wind for the first time. A soul that never knew love feels a warmth that softens its shadow. Hades permits these markets for they bring balance. Memory is not only burden. It is also gift. And in the calm exchange of memory, eternity finds variety. In Elysium, feasts are held, not of hunger, not of need, but of celebration. Long tables stand beneath groves of ever-bearing trees. Cups are filled with wine that never sours. Platters hold bread that never hardens, fruit that never rots, honey that never clings too sweetly. Heroes sit side by side, telling tales not in pride but in fellowship. One speaks of battles won, another of voyages survived, another of cities founded. Their voices do not compete, they weave together, forming a tapestry of remembrance. Laughter rises, soft and full, like the glow of fireflies on a summer evening. Music follows the feast. Lyres are strummed, flutes are played, voices join in songs that ripple across the fields. The sound carries far, floating into the twilight air, reaching even the asphodel meadows where quieter souls pause and listen. For a moment even they are warmed by the echo of joy. Along the banks of each river stand watchers, souls who have chosen to linger near the waters. By the Lethe, they help newcomers release their burdens, guiding them gently as they drink and forget. By the Cocytus, they comfort those who weep, sitting beside them until the wails soften into sighs. By the Styx, they guard the oaths, their presence a silent reminder of weight and consequence. These watchers are not commanded by Hades. They are volunteers, souls who found purpose in service. Their vigil is eternal, yet they do not tire. Purpose is their strength, and in giving it, they rest. When Hades walks the riverbanks, he pauses to acknowledge them. He does not praise loudly. He nods. He meets their gaze. And in that meeting they know they are seen. At the end of each cycle of judgment, at the quiet turning of the underworld's rhythm, Hades returns to his throne. The great hall empties, the torches dim, the shadows grow long. He sits, still and silent, upon the seat of stone. The silence is deep, but it is not lonely. It is the silence of mountains, of oceans, of things too vast to clamor. From this silence, the underworld draws strength. Hades listens. He hears the faint splash of Charon's or the distant cry of a soul arriving, the soft growl of Cerberus shifting at the gates. He hears Persephone's footsteps when she walks the courtyards, the murmur of judges speaking in calm tones, the whisper of rivers in their endless flow. And beneath all of it, he hears the heartbeat of the cosmos itself, the pulse of life and death, of beginnings and endings, of stories closing and others opening. Thus the underworld lives, not in chaos but in balance, not in terror but in structure. It breathes in cycles of judgment and rest, of sorrow and joy, of silence and song. Hades is not a tyrant here. He is the keeper of rhythm, the guardian of balance, the silent presence that allows eternity to move without collapsing. The living fear his name. But the dead know him as steady, as fair, as necessary. And so his realm endures, vast and shadowed, soft and solemn, filled with rivers that never run dry and fields that never lose their calm. Breathe slowly now. Imagine the meadows, the gardens, the courtyards, the halls. Imagine the rivers murmuring, the torches glowing, the silence holding. This is the kingdom of Hades. This is the peace of the underworld. In the deep silence of the underworld, where rivers whispered and shadows lingered with patience, Hades ruled with a steady hand. His realm was vast, endless in its mystery. The black waters of the Styx wound their way like eternal veins, carrying the oaths of gods and men. The pale banks of the Lethe invited forgetfulness, where souls came to drink and lose their memories, dissolving into the flow of time itself. Though Hades was sovereign, his power immense, there was a stillness within him that no wealth of the underworld could fill. He possessed countless treasures, veins of gold that stretched beneath the earth, gemstones pressed by millennia into radiant brilliance. Yet these riches did not warm the solitude of his throne. For Hades, the king of the dead, carried in his chest a hunger deeper than all the caverns of his realm. It was not hunger for conquest, nor for mortal worship, nor even for dominion over his fellow gods. It was a hunger for companionship, for presence. Above, in the world bathed by sunlight, Persephone, daughter of Demeter, grew like the very blossoms that bent toward her touch. She was called Kore, the maiden, and wherever she walked, meadows bloomed in colors unimagined. Her laughter, soft and bright, made flowers tilt as though listening, and rivers quickened as though eager to reach her side. She was innocence and renewal, the breath of spring itself, untouched by shadow. Hades watched her from afar. Not from envy, not from greed, but from a yearning that rose each time the seasons turned and Persephone walked the fields. He saw in her not only the light of life, but the balance he himself lacked. For in her laughter there was warmth enough to soften the silence of his realm. Time in Olympus flowed like a circle, repeating endlessly with the turning of the seasons. And so it was one fateful day that Persephone wandered farther than usual. She strayed from her companions, her hands filled with blossoms, her basket heavy with fragrant petals. The meadow swayed gently in the breeze, tall grasses bending like worshippers. Above, the sky spread vast and flawless, but beneath the soil, something stirred, a pulse, a deep call, a silence about to break. Hades, moved by a force beyond will, emerged. The earth trembled as a fissure opened. From the darkness below, his golden chariot, drawn by black steeds, surged into the meadow. Shadows clung to him like a mantle, yet his form shone with the authority of a god. His eyes, steady and eternal, met Persephone's, and in that instant the world paused. A gaze of longing met with a gaze of surprise. The ground closed behind them, swallowing the meadow, swallowing her cries. The sunlight dimmed. Persephone's basket fell, scattering petals that would never again feel her hand. The world above gasped, but beneath, in the shadowed kingdom, a story of love and balance had begun. Persephone, carried in Hades' arms, trembled between fear and wonder. The underworld spread before her, a vast expanse of caverns jeweled with hidden fire, rivers glowing with faint phosphorescence, fields where pale flowers grew without the touch of the sun. Hades spoke softly, his voice deep as the rumble of earth. "Do not fear, Persephone. You are not prisoner here. You are queen." But Persephone, her heart bound still to the meadows above, wept quietly. Her tears fell like rain upon the marble steps of his palace. And Demeter, far above, heard the absence of her daughter in the silence of the fields. She searched, and as she searched, the earth withered. Leaves curled, rivers slowed, and grain failed to rise. The gods themselves felt the change, for Demeter's grief spread famine across the world. Mortals prayed and burned offerings, yet the land remained barren. No blossom rose, no harvest ripened. The world grew heavy with sorrow, and Zeus, seeing the danger, called for Hermes, swift messenger of gods, to descend and bring word from the shadowed halls. And thus began the great tale of Persephone's choice, of the seed that bound her, and of the eternal balance between shadow and light. The halls of Hades stretched vast and solemn, carved from obsidian and veined with silver that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. The ceilings soared like the caverns of mountains, their arches lost in shadow, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the distance like a heartbeat. At the very center stood the throne of the underworld, immense and unyielding, a seat not of vanity but of duty. Persephone, her footsteps hesitant, followed Hades as he led her deeper into the heart of his realm. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint fragrance of asphodel, pale blossoms that filled the meadows of the dead, swaying softly though no wind stirred. To her eyes, the sight was strange, haunting, yet not without a certain beauty. Here, where no sun shone, life still found form, delicate and enduring. Hades, ever silent, walked beside her with care. Though his presence was formidable, he carried himself not as a conqueror but as one afraid to startle a bird already trembling. His words were rare, chosen with patience, and when he spoke, his tone held a gentleness unexpected of the ruler of shadows. Persephone listened, her hands clasped before her, her heart still torn between fear and curiosity. She thought of her mother, Demeter, of the fields left empty, of the harvest that waited for her touch. But here too there was something that stirred within her, a strange awareness that these halls, though quiet, pulsed with meaning. Days in the underworld did not pass as they did above. There was no rising of the sun, no fall of night. Time flowed differently, marked only by the arrival of new souls and the soft murmur of the rivers. Persephone wandered through the meadows of asphodel, her hands brushing the pale blossoms that seemed to bow as she passed. She saw the river Styx glimmering dark and eternal, the silent boat of Charon drifting across its waters with passengers cloaked in mist. She heard the faint growl of Cerberus, the three-headed guardian, whose eyes softened when she drew near. And Hades, though distant at times, watched her always. He did not command her, did not bind her, but allowed her to wander, to see, to learn. Slowly, Persephone began to notice the care hidden within the silence of the king. He walked beside her when she wished, and when she wished solitude, he stepped away, his shadow lingering but never pressing. Above, Demeter's grief deepened. She wandered the earth in search of her daughter, her once bright face now pale, her laughter replaced by weeping. She withdrew her gifts from the world. Grains shriveled in their fields, vines withered on their trellises, and orchards bore no fruit. Men and women cried out in hunger, their prayers rising in smoke toward Olympus. Yet Demeter, deaf to all but her sorrow, offered no relief. The earth grew barren and the gods turned to Zeus. If this famine continues, they said, mankind will perish. Their offerings will cease, their temples will fall silent, and the world will empty. Zeus frowned, for he too felt the absence of the harvests. He knew the cause, though he had remained silent. At last he summoned Hermes, winged messenger, to descend into the underworld and carry his decree. Hermes descended swiftly, his sandals flashing, his staff gleaming with twin serpents. The gates of the underworld opened at his approach, Cerberus bowing with all three heads, and Hermes entered the shadowed halls with the light of Olympus clinging to his presence. He found Hades and Persephone seated in the great hall, silent but not unkindly. Persephone's hands rested upon the arms of a smaller throne placed beside Hades, her face calm though her eyes still held the brightness of the world above. "Hades," Hermes said, his voice clear, "Zeus commands that Persephone return to her mother. The earth withers in her absence, and the cries of mankind reach even Olympus. Demeter will not relent until her daughter is restored to her side." Hades listened, his gaze steady. He did not rage, nor did he plead, but a shadow passed across his face like a cloud before the moon. Persephone, at the words, felt her heart leap. The thought of reunion with her mother filled her with longing. And yet, as her eyes turned toward Hades, she felt another pull, softer but undeniable, a root already pressing into the soil of her being. It was then that Hades spoke. "She may go. I will not chain her here. But before she leaves, let her choose to take or to refuse what my table offers. If she takes nothing, she will return wholly to her mother. But if she eats of this realm, even a seed, then she will belong not only to the earth above, but to the shadows below as well." Persephone listened, and in her silence, a bowl was brought forth. Within it lay pomegranate seeds, red as blood, glistening as though filled with fire. She stared at them, her heart trembling, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the bowl. And then, almost without knowing why, she lifted them. 6 seeds, small and round, gleamed in her palm. She raised them to her lips and ate. Their taste was sharp, sweet, and lingering, and as she swallowed, a shiver passed through her, not of fear but of destiny sealing itself around her. Hermes saw and nodded, for the choice had been made. He lifted his staff and spoke again. "So it shall be. 6 seeds you have taken, Persephone, and for 6 months of each year you shall remain here beside Hades, queen of this realm. For the other 6, you shall ascend, returning to your mother and to the world above." Persephone lowered her gaze, her heart heavy and light at once. She thought of Demeter's arms, the warmth of the sunlit meadows. She thought also of Hades' silent presence, the shelter of his halls, the strange comfort that had begun to grow within her. Hades bowed his head. "So it is written. So it shall be." And thus the balance was struck, light and shadow, life and rest, joy and sorrow. Above, when Persephone returned, Demeter embraced her with tears that fell like rain, and the earth bloomed once more. Grains swelled in their fields, orchards bent heavy with fruit, and flowers sprang in colors brighter than ever before. But when the time came for Persephone to return below, the leaves fell, the earth grew cold, and winter spread across the land. And so the cycle began, spring and summer with Demeter, autumn and winter with Hades. The world itself followed the rhythm of their parting and reunion. Yet beneath the pattern of seasons there lingered the quiet truth. Persephone was no longer maiden alone. She was queen not of shadow nor of light but of both. And Hades, who had once ruled in solitude, now walked with her at his side, no longer only king of the dead, but consort to the goddess who bound earth and underworld together. The world above rejoiced when Persephone returned. Her presence alone restored life to the fields, coaxing seeds from their sleep and drawing blossoms from their stems. Farmers, who had cursed the barren ground, now lifted their eyes to the heavens in gratitude. Birds filled the skies with song, and children ran laughing through meadows that only weeks before had been gray and lifeless. Demeter, her arms never leaving her daughter's shoulders, watched with a gaze both tender and fierce. She would not let Persephone out of her sight. Every morning she rose beside her, and every night she kissed her forehead as though the goddess were still a child cradled in her lap. Yet beneath her joy lingered a shadow, the knowledge that when the months passed, her daughter would again descend. At times, Demeter would catch Persephone looking toward the horizon with a quiet expression, neither sadness nor fear, but something deeper, a longing unspoken. The mother's heart knew, her daughter was no longer hers alone. Persephone herself wrestled with this truth. Above, she reveled in the sun, in the warmth of fields bursting with green. She ran barefoot across hills, her laughter blending with the hum of bees, her fingers weaving chains of daisies into crowns. But when she lay beneath the stars at night, she felt an echo of another place, the quiet halls of shadow, the cool fragrance of asphodel, and a throne beside which she belonged. The duality became her nature. In spring and summer she was the maiden of renewal, the bringer of harvest, the radiant child of Demeter. In autumn and winter she was queen of the underworld, regal and solemn, guiding souls with steady hands. She was no longer defined by one title, but by the balance of both. Hades, in the underworld, awaited her return with patience. He never pressed her to come sooner, never sent messengers to tug her back. He respected the rhythm decreed, even if his heart too felt her absence. When Persephone stepped once more into his halls, the torches seemed to burn brighter, and the shadows softened, welcoming their queen. In those months, Persephone did not merely sit upon her throne in silence. She began to walk the meadows of the dead with purpose, her presence a balm to wandering souls. She spoke with shades who lingered in sorrow, offering them comfort. Where her feet touched, pale blossoms rose, not of mortal bloom but flowers of silver and ghostly white. They glowed faintly in the dark, lighting the path for those who wandered. The souls whispered her name reverent, Kore maiden, Persephone queen. To them she was hope even in death, proof that even in the coldest silence beauty endured. Hades watched her work, silent yet proud. For centuries he had ruled with justice, but justice alone was not comfort. Persephone brought what he could not, gentleness. Where his decrees held order, hers offered compassion. Together they made the realm whole. Above, the gods of Olympus murmured. Some envied the bond between Hades and Persephone, others pitied it. Hera whispered of Demeter's unyielding sorrow. Aphrodite, jealous of a love that grew without her arrows, warned that even the strongest ties might fray. Yet Zeus in his wisdom said nothing. For he saw what others could not, that the balance of earth and underworld depended now on Persephone's choice, and she chose both. The mortals too wove stories. They said the changing seasons were the goddess' steps. When she rose, life awoke; when she left, the earth mourned. They told their children that Persephone's descent was not loss, but a promise, that death too was a season and spring would always follow. In time, Persephone began to love not only her place above or below, but the journey itself. The moment of leaving, the moment of returning, these became sacred to her, mirrors of the cycle every soul must walk. She began to understand that life was not endless harvest, nor endless shadow, but the rhythm of both. Hades, once a god of solitude, no longer walked his realm alone. He would pace beside Persephone as she moved through the meadows, his tall figure dark as night, her smaller form radiant as moonlight. Together they became a vision, shadow and flame, solemnity and grace. When councils of gods were called, Persephone spoke with a voice both steady and clear. She did not seek power, yet her words carried weight. Even Zeus leaned closer when she spoke of balance, for her wisdom was rooted in experience none other could claim. She had lived both halves of existence, life's joy and death's quiet. Few could argue against the goddess who embodied both. Still there were trials. Demeter, though she learned to accept the cycle, could never let go of her grief. At times she would argue with Zeus, demanding more months for her daughter above. At times she would plead with Persephone herself. But Persephone gently would shake her head. "Mother," she would say, "I am not lost to you. I am yours and his. The earth needs you and the dead need me. Would you have me forsake them?" And Demeter, though tears glistened in her eyes, would nod. For she knew her daughter spoke the truth. Thus, the story of Persephone and Hades became not merely a tale of abduction or of fate, but of transformation. The maiden became a queen, the solitary king found a partner, and the world itself was bound by their rhythm. Every falling leaf, every snow-covered field, every blossom of spring bore their mark. In the silence of winter, mortals remembered Persephone in the shadowed halls. In the laughter of summer they rejoiced in her return. The gods may have quarreled, the mortals may have prayed, but the balance held unshaken. For in the love of Hades and Persephone, the cosmos found a rhythm eternal. The world of mortals always lived beneath the gaze of the gods. They tilled their fields, raised their children, offered sacrifices, and prayed to powers they could not see yet felt in every wind, every storm, every harvest and every silence. Among all the mysteries of existence, none shaped their lives more directly than the turning of the seasons. For in the cycle of warmth and cold, of life and quiet, the story of Hades and Persephone was written not only in myth but in the earth itself. When Persephone walked the upper world, spring awakened. Seeds long buried beneath the soil pushed their green shoots toward the sun. Buds unfolded with patience, opening into flowers of every hue. Farmers felt hope rise in their hearts as furrows sprouted with grain. Children ran into meadows where daisies nodded and bees hummed. The air itself seemed sweeter, infused with her presence. The mortals did not see her directly, for few ever glimpsed a goddess in her divine form, but they felt her. They said that when a warm breeze carried the scent of blossoms, it was her laughter drifting across the fields. They said that when rivers swelled with melting snow and danced over their banks, it was her joy overflowing. They said that when lovers met beneath flowering trees, Persephone's hand guided their hearts together. She was life renewed, joy reborn, the world itself opening its eyes after the long dream of winter. But when she descended once more into the underworld, the earth dimmed. The warmth retreated, the fields emptied, and silence grew heavy upon the land. Farmers stared at their barren soil with anxious eyes. Mothers wrapped their children in cloaks against the chill. Fires burned longer in the hearths, yet their glow never seemed to match the warmth of the sun that had departed. This was not punishment. It was balance. Persephone belonged to both realms, and the world itself mirrored her rhythm. When she was with her mother, the earth thrived. When she returned to her husband, the earth rested, folded into quiet, preparing for renewal. The mortals, though they suffered hunger in the lean months, came to understand that this was necessary. Without rest the earth would tire. Without pause life would lose its rhythm. And so they honored both her presence and her absence, for both were sacred. Each year, festivals were held to mark her return. In small villages, women carried baskets of flowers to shrines, laying them gently at the feet of statues carved in her likeness. In great cities, processions filled the streets with music, torches, and offerings. Grain was scattered on the ground, symbolizing abundance, while children crowned themselves with garlands to welcome the goddess. But there were also rituals for her descent. In hushed ceremonies, mourners lit lamps and carried them into caves or cellars, symbols of the underworld's shadows. They whispered prayers for Persephone's safe journey, for her comfort at her husband's side, and for her eventual return. They spoke of her not only as the bringer of life, but as the queen of death, the gentle guide of souls. In this way Persephone became more than a goddess of the fields. She became a bridge between two worlds, a comfort to mortals who knew that life and death were inseparable. For when their loved ones passed beyond the veil, they believed Persephone herself would walk with them, taking their hands, guiding them with compassion to the halls of Hades. And in that belief death lost some of its terror. Hades, in the underworld, awaited her return with patience. He never pressed her to come sooner, never sent messengers to tug her back. He respected the rhythm decreed, even if his heart too felt her absence. When Persephone stepped once more into his halls, the torches seemed to burn brighter, and the shadows softened, welcoming their queen. In those months, Persephone did not merely sit upon her throne in silence. She began to walk the meadows of the dead with purpose, her presence a balm to wandering souls. She spoke with shades who lingered in sorrow, offering them comfort. Where her feet touched, pale blossoms rose, not of mortal bloom but flowers of silver and ghostly white. They glowed faintly in the dark, lighting the path for those who wandered. The souls whispered her name reverent, Kore maiden, Persephone queen. To them she was hope even in death, proof that even in the coldest silence beauty endured. Hades watched her work, silent yet proud. For centuries he had ruled with justice, but justice alone was not comfort. Persephone brought what he could not, gentleness. Where his decrees held order, hers offered compassion. Together they made the realm whole. Above, the gods of Olympus murmured. Some envied the bond between Hades and Persephone, others pitied it. Hera whispered of Demeter's unyielding sorrow. Aphrodite, jealous of a love that grew without her arrows, warned that even the strongest ties might fray. Yet Zeus in his wisdom said nothing. For he saw what others could not, that the balance of earth and underworld depended now on Persephone's choice, and she chose both. The mortals too wove stories. They said the changing seasons were the goddess' steps. When she rose, life awoke, when she left, the earth mourned. They told their children that Persephone's descent was not loss, but a promise. That death too was a season and spring would always follow. In time, Persephone began to love not only her place above or below, but the journey itself. The moment of leaving, the moment of returning, these became sacred to her, mirrors of the cycle every soul must walk. She began to understand that life was not endless harvest, nor endless shadow, but the rhythm of both. Hades, once a god of solitude, no longer walked his realm alone. He would pace beside Persephone as she moved through the meadows, his tall figure dark as night, her smaller form radiant as moonlight. Together they became a vision, shadow and flame, solemnity and grace. When councils of gods were called, Persephone spoke with a voice both steady and clear. She did not seek power, yet her words carried weight. Even Zeus leaned closer when she spoke of balance, for her wisdom was rooted in experience none other could claim. She had lived both halves of existence, life's joy and death's quiet. Few could argue against the goddess who embodied both. Still there were trials. Demeter, though she learned to accept the cycle, could never let go of her grief. At times she would argue with Zeus, demanding more months for her daughter above. At times she would plead with Persephone herself. But Persephone gently would shake her head. "Mother," she would say, "I am not lost to you. I am yours and his. The earth needs you and the dead need me. Would you have me forsake them?" And Demeter, though tears glistened in her eyes, would nod. For she knew her daughter spoke the truth. Thus, the story of Persephone and Hades became not merely a tale of abduction or of fate, but of transformation. The maiden became a queen, the solitary king found a partner, and the world itself was bound by their rhythm. Every falling leaf, every snow-covered field, every blossom of spring bore their mark. In the silence of winter, mortals remembered Persephone in the shadowed halls. In the laughter of summer, they rejoiced in her return. The gods may have quarreled, the mortals may have prayed, but the balance held unshaken. For in the love of Hades and Persephone, the cosmos found a rhythm eternal. The world of mortals always lived beneath the gaze of the gods. They tilled their fields, raised their children, offered sacrifices, and prayed to powers they could not see yet felt in every wind, every storm, every harvest and every silence. Among all the mysteries of existence, none shaped their lives more directly than the turning of the seasons. For in the cycle of warmth and cold, of life and quiet, the story of Hades and Persephone was written not only in myth but in the earth itself. When Persephone walked the upper world, spring awakened. Seeds long buried beneath the soil pushed their green shoots toward the sun. Buds unfolded with patience, opening into flowers of every hue. Farmers felt hope rise in their hearts as furrows sprouted with grain. Children ran into meadows where daisies nodded and bees hummed. The air itself seemed sweeter, infused with her presence. The mortals did not see her directly, for few ever glimpsed a goddess in her divine form, but they felt her. They said that when a warm breeze carried the scent of blossoms, it was her laughter drifting across the fields. They said that when rivers swelled with melting snow and danced over their banks, it was her joy overflowing. They said that when lovers met beneath flowering trees, Persephone's hand guided their hearts together. She was life renewed, joy reborn, the world itself opening its eyes after the long dream of winter. But when she descended once more into the underworld, the earth dimmed. The warmth retreated, the fields emptied, and silence grew heavy upon the land. Farmers stared at their barren soil with anxious eyes. Mothers wrapped their children in cloaks against the chill. Fires burned longer in the hearths, yet their glow never seemed to match the warmth of the sun that had departed. This was not punishment. It was balance. Persephone belonged to both realms, and the world itself mirrored her rhythm. When she was with her mother, the earth thrived. When she returned to her husband, the earth rested, folded into quiet, preparing for renewal. The mortals, though they suffered hunger in the lean months, came to understand that this was necessary. Without rest the earth would tire. Without pause life would lose its rhythm. And so they honored both her presence and her absence, for both were sacred. Each year, festivals were held to mark her return. In small villages, women carried baskets of flowers to shrines, laying them gently at the feet of statues carved in her likeness. In great cities, processions filled the streets with music, torches, and offerings. Grain was scattered on the ground, symbolizing abundance, while children crowned themselves with garlands to welcome the goddess. But there were also rituals for her descent. In hushed ceremonies, mourners lit lamps and carried them into caves or cellars, symbols of the underworld's shadows. They whispered prayers for Persephone's safe journey, for her comfort at her husband's side, and for her eventual return. They spoke of her not only as the bringer of life, but as the queen of death, the gentle guide of souls. In this way Persephone became more than a goddess of the fields. She became a bridge between two worlds, a comfort to mortals who knew that life and death were inseparable. For when their loved ones passed beyond the veil, they believed Persephone herself would walk with them, taking their hands, guiding them with compassion to the halls of Hades. And in that belief death lost some of its terror. The mortals in their own way mirrored this duality. In spring they were vibrant, filled with hope, building, planting, creating. They lifted their faces to the sun, gave thanks for warmth, and filled their hearts with laughter. But in winter they turned inward. They endured. They told stories by the hearth, they remembered their ancestors, they prayed for patience. They learned that both seasons were sacred, both were necessary just as both realms belonged to Persephone. Temples rose to her name. In some, statues showed her as a maiden crowned with flowers, holding sheaves of wheat. In others she was depicted as a queen, seated upon a throne, a torch in one hand and a pomegranate in the other. The dual images did not contradict, they completed one another. To pray to Persephone was to pray for life and for peace in death, for spring and for winter, for presence and for absence. Priests taught that those who honored her would not fear the grave. For just as Persephone returned each year, so too would souls find renewal in their own way. Death was not an end, they said, but a passage. And Persephone, compassionate and gentle, would guide them through it. This teaching gave mortals courage. Warriors facing battle whispered her name, believing she would receive them kindly should they fall. Mothers burying children prayed that Persephone's hands would cradle them in the next world. Farmers, weary from labor, found comfort in knowing that rest, like winter, was not forever. And so the myth deepened. It was no longer only the story of a god who took a maiden, nor of a mother who mourned, nor of a compromise that shaped the earth. It became a mirror of life itself, a reminder that joy and sorrow, light and shadow, beginning and ending were bound together. The gods knew this. Zeus, from his throne, saw that the balance of the cosmos depended upon his daughter's rhythm. Demeter, though her heart ached, came to understand that her daughter was greater than the role of a child. She was a queen in her own right. Even the other gods, some jealous, some indifferent, could not deny the power of the story. But none knew it more deeply than Hades and Persephone themselves. For when she returned each year, when her feet touched the dark marble floors of his palace, when her hand slid into his, the world itself seemed to exhale. And when she departed, when he watched her ascend, the silence of his realm grew heavy, yet it was no longer despair. It was patience. It was trust. It was the knowledge that she would return. And so the rhythm continued, year after year, century after century, story after story. In the stillness of the cosmos, hidden beneath the shifting lands of the mortal world, there lies a kingdom unlike any other. It is not a place of fire and torment, nor of chaos and endless punishment, as later tales would sometimes portray. Instead, it is a realm of shadow, silence, and inevitability, a kingdom both feared and revered, known to all, yet visited only once in the course of existence. This is the realm of Hades, the underworld, where the souls of mortals drift after death, where the final chapters of their stories unfold, and where the quiet balance of life and death is preserved by the unseen hand of its ruler. Close your eyes and imagine it, the mortal breath fading, the final heartbeat echoing softly, and the soul, fragile, weightless, beginning its descent. There is no violence in this transition, only an inevitable slipping away, like a candle burning to its end. One moment, a person feels the weight of their body, the sound of the world, the warmth of light. And then, with that last exhale, all grows dim and they find themselves standing at the threshold of a new reality. This threshold is no ordinary passage. It is the beginning of the journey into the underworld. The soul stands at the border between worlds, where shadows stretch endlessly, and the boundary between life and death feels thinner than a veil of smoke. The living cannot see this place, cannot touch it, but all mortals are destined to arrive here when their time comes. The path stretches downward. Slowly, gently, the soul is drawn along as though carried by a silent current. The air, or what feels like air, is cool and still. There are no bird songs, no rustling leaves, no voices of the living. Only a deep, resonant hush, like the silence of a forest in winter or the quiet after a storm. And in that silence, the soul begins to understand. It has left behind the fleeting world of mortals and is entering something eternal. As the journey continues, the soul encounters the first of many guardians, the shadowy guides who dwell at the borders. These figures are not cruel nor are they kind. They are neutral, ancient, and unchanging. Their task is not to comfort, nor to harm but to guide. They direct the soul along the unseen road, down toward the rivers that mark the boundary of Hades' domain. Each step is slow, steady, measured, as though the world itself insists on patience. For in this realm there is no haste. Time does not press as it does among the living. In the underworld, everything unfolds at its own eternal pace. And then the soul sees it, the first river. Wide, dark, and endless, it flows like liquid night, reflecting no starlight, no sun. This is the Styx, the river of hatred, whose waters separate the world of the living from the kingdom of the dead. Its surface is smooth and silent, but beneath it churn forces beyond comprehension, binding oaths, punishing liars, carrying with it the memory of every broken promise and every betrayed trust. The Styx is not merely a river, it is a boundary of power, one even the gods themselves must respect. For to swear an oath upon the Styx is to bind oneself irrevocably. And to break such an oath is to suffer consequences more terrible than any mortal punishment. Here waits Charon the ferryman, his figure cloaked in shadows. His eyes are deep and hollow, like dark wells that have seen countless generations pass before them. He holds a long pole, steadying his small boat, which rests upon the dark waters. His duty is eternal, to carry the souls across from the edge of mortality to the true gates of Hades. Yet he does not work freely. Payment is required. For this reason, mortals long ago began the custom of placing coins upon the eyes or in the mouths of their dead, so that when the soul arrived here, it would not be stranded on the riverbank, unable to cross. Those without payment wander the shores endlessly, caught in a restless state, unable to move forward, unable to return. The boat rocks softly as the ferryman gestures. The soul steps aboard and the waters stretch around them, endless and heavy. The crossing is slow, deliberately so, for in this moment the soul has nothing but time. The silence deepens, broken only by the faint lap of water against the boat's wooden sides. The darkness of the Styx presses close, but it is not suffocating. It is simply all-encompassing, like being wrapped in a heavy, eternal night. When the boat finally reaches the opposite bank, the soul steps ashore and finds itself before the gates of Hades. Towering and massive, they are carved from black stone, their surfaces etched with symbols so ancient that no mortal tongue can speak them. Here stands the guardian of the gates, Cerberus, the hound of Hades. With 3 great heads, each bearing eyes that gleam like burning coals, Cerberus watches without blinking. His growl rumbles low, not always in menace but in vigilance. His duty is not to torment the dead, but to ensure that no living soul enters uninvited and no departed soul dares to escape. Loyal to his master, tireless in his task, he paces at the gates, the sound of his claws echoing against the stone. For those who belong here, for the shades of the dead who have come to find their place, Cerberus poses no threat. He allows them to pass, watching with unyielding attention as they drift beyond the gates. But for those who would try to cheat death, who would seek to steal from Hades' realm, or to flee its inevitable grasp, Cerberus becomes terror incarnate. His teeth are sharp as obsidian, his roar like thunder, his strength beyond imagining. Few have ever dared to challenge him, and fewer still have succeeded. Beyond the gates lies the true underworld, vast and sprawling, a land with many regions, each with its own nature, its own atmosphere, its own destiny for the souls that dwell there. The ground is dark, the sky is shadowed, yet the realm is not devoid of substance. There are fields that stretch far and wide, though no flowers bloom, no crops grow. There are groves of pale trees, their leaves whispering softly though no wind stirs. The air is cool, heavy, and filled with the quiet presence of countless shades moving in silence, like a great tide of memory flowing endlessly. Here the soul encounters the judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. Once kings among mortals, now they sit in solemn authority, weighing the deeds of each soul. They do not shout, nor do they hurry. Their judgments are measured, calm, deliberate. Each soul's life is laid before them like an open book, its actions, choices, and intentions revealed in full clarity. The judges speak little, but their decisions carry eternal weight. They determine the path each soul must take, to the fields of asphodel, where most wander in quiet neutrality, to the Elysian fields, where the noble and virtuous find peace, or to the darker depths of Tartarus, where the cruel and unjust face their punishment. Asphodel is the most common destiny. It stretches endlessly, a vast plain where countless shades drift aimlessly, neither in joy nor in torment. It is a place of sameness, of monotony, where souls linger in quiet reflection of lives that were neither glorious nor vile. Here there is no pain but also no exaltation, only the gentle stillness of eternity. Elysium, by contrast, is radiant, though its radiance is not like the sun of the mortal world. Its light is softer, golden, perpetual. Here heroes walk, musicians play, poets sing, and the noble rest beneath trees that never wither. The air is always warm, the fields forever green. To reach Elysium is to find reward, a peace reserved for those whose lives bore greatness. And then there is Tartarus. Deep, cold, and fearsome, it lies far beneath even the rest of the underworld. Its gates are iron, its walls unyielding, its depths endless. Here the greatest sinners, the betrayers, and the enemies of the gods themselves suffer their punishments. Not by chance, not by cruelty, but by the weight of justice. For Tartarus is less a place of arbitrary torment and more a reflection of the cosmic order. Those who defied the natural balance, who spilled innocent blood or waged war against the divine, find themselves here, where eternity becomes their sentence. And above it all, quiet, unseen, and unshaken, rules Hades. He does not sit upon a shining throne, nor does he command the storms of the sky or the waves of the sea. His reign is different, marked by constancy and inevitability. He ensures that the boundaries remain unbroken, that the balance between life and death is preserved, that the underworld remains as it must be. He is not cruel, though mortals often feared him. He is not vindictive, though many prayed to avoid his gaze. He is, instead, the embodiment of permanence, the Lord of what lies beyond change. His kingdom is not chaos, it is order. And in his order the universe itself finds balance. When mortals close their eyes for the final time, when breath fades softly into silence, their essence begins a journey that does not rush, a journey that does not end in haste, but one that unfolds slowly, like the gentle drifting of leaves on a quiet autumn stream. The soul, faint and luminous, separates from the body with hesitation. It lingers for a moment, almost reluctant to let go of the familiar weight of flesh, almost unwilling to release the warmth of life. But destiny is patient, and the unseen currents of existence guide it forward. The newly released spirit feels light, as though it floats upon invisible waters. It hears the muffled echoes of the living world, the weeping of loved ones, the rustling of wind through trees, the murmur of prayers whispered for safe passage. Gradually those sounds fade, until only silence remains. A silence that is not empty but full, full of mystery, full of stillness, full of the promise of another realm. Soon, the soul reaches the border where daylight ends and the shadows of the underworld begin. There, across a dim horizon, stretches the first of the great rivers of Hades, the Styx. Its waters glisten black as polished obsidian, flowing endlessly under a sky without stars. The Styx does not roar like mortal rivers. Instead it whispers. It whispers with countless voices, the voices of oaths once sworn, promises once broken, vows sealed in truth or shattered in betrayal. For the Styx is not merely water, it is memory, it is binding, it is the river of unbreakable oaths. Upon its banks waits Charon the ferryman. Old, silent, and eternal, his figure is cloaked in tattered robes that ripple like smoke. His eyes are deep hollows, reflecting neither pity nor cruelty, but only inevitability. In his hands the oar rests, smooth, worn, timeless. For countless ages he has rowed across the Styx, carrying souls from one shore to another. No word escapes his lips, for his task requires no speech. Only the exchange of a single coin, placed with care upon the tongue or the eyes of the deceased. Those who carry the fair step onto his boat, a fragile craft of weathered wood that nevertheless never sinks, never breaks, never drifts astray. The boat rocks gently, softly, like a cradle upon dark waters. And so the souls glide across, listening to the whispers of the Styx as the ferryman rows without pause. But those without coin, they remain stranded. They wander the misty banks, restless, lost, circling endlessly in shadows. They reach for the boat, but their hands pass through it like air. They call out, but no sound emerges. And so they linger in sorrow until mercy, or remembrance, delivers what was denied to them. As the boat moves, the landscape shifts. The living world recedes behind a veil of mist. The air grows cooler, heavier, infused with a fragrance unlike any known on earth. Not the sweetness of flowers, not the salt of the sea, but a scent of eternity itself. Damp stone, faded echoes, and the stillness of time. Beyond the Styx lies the asphodel meadow, a plain without end where countless pale flowers sway in silence. Here wander the ordinary souls, neither virtuous nor wicked. They drift slowly among the blossoms, their faces calm, their memories faint. It is neither joy nor torment that they find here, but a gentle quiet, a sameness that stretches forever. The meadow hums softly as if the earth itself breathes in a rhythm meant to lull all who walk upon it. Yet beyond this meadow lies the path to greater destinies. Those of heroic virtue or exceptional glory are guided further, toward the Elysian fields, where sunlight glows eternal and breezes sing of harmony. There, souls rest in joy, free from care, embraced by beauty everlasting. And those who carried cruelty, those who stained their existence with unrepentant malice, are drawn downward toward the abyss known as Tartarus. There the air burns with unseen fire. There the cries of punishment echo across endless caverns. There ancient offenders, titans, rebels, oath breakers, endure torments beyond measure. Between these places Hades walks unseen. He does not interfere often, for the balance is steady, the order already set. But his presence is felt, in the silence of the meadow, in the bliss of Elysium, in the shadows of Tartarus. He is not judge, for others weigh the souls. He is not executioner, for punishments are carried out by their own weight. He is guardian. Silent, patient, enduring, the keeper of all realms below. And so the cycle repeats. Each day, each night, Though time loses its meaning in the depths, souls arrive. Some drift calmly, some resist, some weep, some laugh in madness. But all eventually find their place. And Hades watches, ever still, ever solemn, ensuring that not one thread of fate strays from the tapestry. The underworld is not a single path, nor a single plane, nor a single cavern. It is a vast and layered realm, held together by forces as old as creation itself. At the heart of this world flow the 5 rivers, each one eternal, each one alive in its own way. They are not merely waters, they are truths. They are not streams, they are emotions, memories, vows and punishments made visible. And every soul, no matter its fate, encounters their presence. We spoke of the Styx, the black river, dark as night yet gleaming like polished stone. It coils like a serpent through the underworld, encircling it 9 times before closing upon itself. Its waters are not gentle, nor are they violent. They are inevitable, flowing with a patience that outlasts gods and mortals alike. When the Olympians swear an oath, they do so upon the Styx. Its waters bind truth with chains stronger than iron, chains stronger than destiny. To break an oath sworn by the Styx is to invite destruction. Even gods are not immune. For the Styx is incorruptible, unyielding, eternal. Souls who drift near its banks hear whispers of their own promises, echoes of words once spoken. A vow of love, a pledge of loyalty, a curse muttered in anger. All linger here, woven into the current, carried forever in its endless tide. The river teaches silence, for words have weight, and every utterance finds its reflection here. Beyond the meadow lies the Lethe, the pale river, shimmering with waters soft as moonlight. Here silence deepens. Here memory itself dissolves. The Lethe flows not with noise but with absence. It carries away burdens, sorrows, the heavy weight of remembrance. Souls who long for peace come to drink from its waters. With every sip, memories fade, of pain, of joy, of struggle, of triumph. All vanish into a gentle nothingness. Some souls seek it eagerly, wishing to forget every tether to mortal life. Others approach with trembling reluctance, clinging to the faces they once loved, the places they once called home. But in the end, memory loosens its grip. The Lethe does not force, it soothes, it lulls, it persuades. Until at last the soul is light, unburdened, adrift in pure simplicity. For the heroes destined for rebirth, drinking of Lethe is essential. Without forgetting their past, they could not begin anew. Thus, Lethe is not cruelty but renewal, the gift of emptiness that allows existence to bloom again. The Acheron winds like a shadow through valleys unseen. It is called the River of Sorrow, for its waters carry the cries of grief, the sighs of parting, the weight of all tears ever shed. When a mortal weeps upon the earth, when grief shakes their chest and despair blinds their vision, that sorrow does not vanish. It flows downward, unseen, feeding the Acheron. Thus, its waters are heavy with lament. They murmur with sadness so deep it seems endless. Souls arriving at its banks often pause, listening to its mournful current. Some weep anew, recognizing their own sorrow within the river's song. Others find strange comfort in its constancy, for here at least, their grief is understood, shared, eternal. The Acheron is the path across which most souls are ferried by Charon. His boat glides silently upon its surface, carrying spirits into the realm where judgment awaits. And so, every soul knows the taste of sorrow, if only for a moment. Deeper still flows the Phlegethon, blazing like molten flame, yet liquid as water. It burns without consuming, it scorches without ending. Its current glows red and gold, casting flickering light across the cavern walls. This river is the embodiment of torment, not sorrow, not memory, but punishment itself. Its flames coil and twist, roaring without smoke, without ash. Within its depths, fiery currents seem to form faces, screaming, pleading, fading. Souls condemned to Tartarus often feel its heat before they see its glow. It winds near the abyss where the punished suffer eternally. The phlegethon does not destroy them. Instead, it renews their torment with every cycle, searing, cleansing, repeating. Yet, for some, the fire is not only pain but also purification. Ancient philosophers whispered that fire could cleanse the spirit, burning away corruption, leaving only truth behind. Thus the phlegethon is both agony and possibility, flame that punishes, flame that purifies. Last comes the Cocytus, perhaps the most haunting of all. Its waters do not blaze, nor whisper, nor soothe. They wail. Along its banks rise cries unending, sobs, shrieks, laments that pierce the still air. This is the river of lamentation, of suffering made sound. Here wander those who were denied proper rights, those whose bodies were left unburied, whose names were forgotten, whose lives ended without honor. Their voices join the river until they are indistinguishable, one endless chorus of grief. The Cocytus flows cold, colder than ice, colder than shadow. Its chill seeps into the bones of the soul, reminding it of loss, of absence, of the pain of neglect. And yet even here there is strange solace. For those who suffered in silence upon the earth, their cries now mingle with countless others. They are no longer alone. Their voices are heard, woven into the eternal current, echoing forever through the dark. Together these 5 rivers shape the underworld. Styx binds with oath. Lethe soothes with forgetfulness. Acheron mourns with sorrow. Phlegethon blazes with fire. Cocytus wails with lament. They are not merely borders or pathways. They are the very veins of Hades' realm, pulsing with the truths of mortal existence. Through them the underworld breathes, eternal and unchanging. And Hades, silent upon his throne, feels each one. He senses the oaths kept and broken. He senses the grief and the forgetfulness. He senses the fire and the lament. All flow through him, for he is the keeper of the realm they nourish. The underworld, vast and endless, does not rest in silence alone. Though the rivers murmur and the meadows stretch into shadow, there are beings who dwell here. Beings who serve, who guard, who embody the forces that shape existence itself. They are not countless in number, but each one is essential. Each one holds a role, a duty, an eternal purpose. And together they weave the living fabric of Hades' realm. At the very gates of the underworld waits Cerberus, the hound of Hades. No mortal can pass him. No soul can escape his sight. He is not a creature born of gentleness, yet neither is he pure cruelty. He is duty incarnate. Cerberus is vast, his body muscled like a mountain, his fur black as shadow. But it is his heads, 3 in number, that strike awe and fear. Each head bears eyes that burn faintly, like coals beneath ash. Each jaw gleams with teeth sharp as polished blades. One head watches the souls who enter, ensuring they pass within and do not flee. Another watches the living, for rare mortals have dared descend into this realm. The last watches the shadows themselves, guarding against what cannot be seen. His growl rumbles like thunder echoing in stone caverns. When he barks, the sound shakes the very gates. And yet, for all his terror, Cerberus is loyal, unyielding, faithful to Hades and Persephone. No bribe tempts him, no trick deceives him, save for the rarest of myths. To the souls who pass, he is inevitability. To the gods, he is a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, order stands watch. Deeper within the realm wander the Erinyes, known also as the Furies. Born of the blood of Uranus when he was overthrown, they are ancient beyond memory. They are not gods, nor mortals, nor simple spirits. They are vengeance embodied. Clad in robes black as night, their hair writhes with serpents, their eyes burn with fire. They carry whips and torches, instruments not of cruelty but of justice. For their role is not to torment every soul, only those who have committed crimes against family, against blood, against sacred duty. Murderers who spill kin's blood. Oath-breakers who betray sacred trust. Such souls cannot hide from the Erinyes. They pursue them relentlessly, their footsteps echoing even in dreams. In the underworld, they enforce balance, ensuring that no crime against the bonds of family goes unanswered. They are terrifying, yet they are also necessary, the embodiment of justice too primal for courts, too ancient for words. Among the figures closest to Hades is Thanatos, gentle and fearsome at once. He is death itself, yet not in the form mortals imagine. Not a skeletal figure, not a monster cloaked in dread, but a calm, winged spirit. Thanatos appears at the moment of passing. With hands cool and steady, he guides the soul from the body, ensuring its journey begins without chaos, without terror. For him, death is not cruelty, not punishment, it is transition. His wings, dark yet soft, fold around the departing spirit, carrying it like a parent carries a child. Mortals feared him, for they feared the unknown. Yet poets whispered of his gentleness, how he brings rest where pain once dwelled, how he offers stillness where struggle once consumed. In the underworld, Thanatos walks unseen, ever present, ever patient. He serves not as ruler, but as guide, ensuring that the endless tide of souls flows steadily toward their rightful place. Twin to Thanatos is Hypnos, the spirit of sleep. Though his domain touches the world of the living more often than the underworld, his presence is felt here too. Hypnos carries with him the power of dreams. In his touch, mortals drift into slumber, their minds wandering through visions woven from memory and imagination. In his wings, silence deepens and the body finds rest. He is gentle, so gentle that even the fiercest of warriors cannot resist him. When he lays his hand upon their brow, eyelids grow heavy, breath softens, and the world fades into stillness. The underworld honors Hypnos, for sleep is the twin of death. One is temporary, the other eternal. And in the quiet of Hades' halls, Hypnos drifts like a shadow of comfort, a reminder that all transitions, whether sleep or death, carry peace within them. Beyond all, older than gods, older than titans, dwells Nyx, the personification of night. Though she does not remain always in the underworld, her presence is deeply tied to its silence, its mystery, its depth. She is vast, robed in darkness, her form endless, her gaze unfathomable. Even Zeus, lord of Olympus, feared to cross her. For Nyx is not simply goddess, she is force. In the underworld, Nyx is felt when the silence grows so deep it seems infinite, when the shadows stretch so far they seem eternal. She is mother of many spirits, companions of Hades, Hypnos and Thanatos among them. Her legacy breathes in every corner of the realm, reminding all who dwell there that before light, before life, there was night. Among those who walk freely between worlds is Hecate, the goddess of crossroads, witchcraft and liminality. Though not bound to Hades, she is welcome there, for her powers touch both life and death. Carrying torches that burn with pale fire, she guides souls who wander, showing them the paths that lead deeper or upward once more. She is invoked in rites, in mysteries, in the magic of thresholds. To mortals she is both feared and revered. To Hades she is an ally, a presence who ensures that the borders between realms remain respected, yet traversable when fate demands. Her dogs howl at crossroads, her light gleams where choice is made. And in the underworld, her torches pierce even the thickest of shadows. Together, these guardians and companions form the living strength of Hades' realm. Cerberus watches the gates. The Erinyes enforce vengeance. Thanatos guides death. Hypnos brings rest. Nyx envelopes all in night. Hecate lights the hidden paths. And through them Hades' kingdom is not chaos but balance. A realm not only of endings but of order, of roles, of eternal harmony, solemn, enduring, unbroken. There was a time when the earth bloomed without interruption. Seasons did not shift as mortals know them now. The meadows were always green, the orchards always heavy with fruit, the rivers always flowing with crystal clarity. The sun lingered long, the rains came gently, and the soil yielded abundance without strain. This age of eternal spring was guarded and nourished by Persephone, the maiden of flowers, the beloved daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. She was young, radiant, gentle, yet within her glimmered a quiet strength, a resilience that only the divine carry. Where Persephone walked, blossoms followed. Her feet brushed the earth, and daisies unfolded their petals. Her laughter rang across the meadows, and violets raised their heads. The nymphs adored her. The dryads danced with her. Even the breeze seemed to soften when she passed, carrying the fragrance of blooming fields. Demeter watched her with love deeper than any ocean. She kept her close, shielded from shadows, sheltered from the gaze of gods who might covet her beauty. For Demeter feared loss, she feared change, and so she clung to her daughter, weaving around her a life of sunlight, orchards, and songs. But the world does not remain untouched forever. Even in endless spring, destiny stirs. And in the depths below, Hades, Lord of the unseen, had already set his gaze upon Persephone. From his dark throne, carved from obsidian, Hades beheld her as she wandered the meadows. He saw not only her beauty, though beauty she possessed beyond measure. He saw her grace, her quiet dignity, her laughter that seemed to heal the very air. And in that moment, his solitude deepened. The underworld was vast, filled with rivers, guardians, and endless souls, yet it was silent. It lacked warmth, lacked companionship, lacked the brightness of another heart. Hades, who had never known longing, now felt it with every shadowed breath. But he was no reckless suitor. He was deliberate, patient, bound by order. And so he sought counsel, not from mortals, not from nymphs, but from his mighty brother Zeus, king of Olympus. Zeus, who weighed all things in balance, heard Hades' plea. He looked upon Persephone, his niece, radiant as dawn, and knew that fate could not be denied. But he also knew that Demeter's love was fierce, unyielding, possessive as the earth itself. To tell her outright would ignite fury. And so Zeus gave Hades his consent in silence, a nod that sealed the path of destiny. Thus the stage was set. The earth bloomed, Persephone laughed, Demeter watched, and in the shadows Hades prepared. One morning, as dawn painted the sky with gentle hues of rose and gold, Persephone wandered into the meadows. She was not alone. The nymphs skipped beside her, their arms filled with woven baskets. They laughed, they sang, they reached for blossoms that bent under the weight of dew. The air was alive with fragrance, hyacinths, crocuses, and violets blended into a symphony of perfume. Persephone's hair shimmered in the sunlight, a crown of unbound gold. Her hands moved delicately, plucking petals, weaving them into garlands. Her laughter was soft, but it seemed to echo across hills and streams. She was the embodiment of spring itself. As she reached a gentle slope, her gaze fell upon a flower unlike any she had ever seen. It grew alone, tall and proud, its petals deep as amethyst and luminous as fire. It seemed to breathe light, to pulse with hidden power. The nymphs gasped in wonder, but Persephone stepped forward, drawn irresistibly by its beauty. She bent down, her slender fingers brushing its stem. And in that moment the earth trembled. A deep groan rose from the ground, a rumble like the very bones of the world awakening. The soil split apart, tearing open into a gaping chasm. Darkness surged upward, smoke, shadow, and the roar of unseen depths. The nymphs screamed, scattering like startled birds, their cries carried away by the wind. From the abyss emerged a chariot of obsidian, drawn by 4 horses black as midnight. Their manes flamed with sparks, their hooves struck the ground with thunder. And at the reins stood Hades, tall, solemn, crowned with shadow, his presence heavy as eternity. His eyes locked upon Persephone. There was no cruelty there, no malice, only inevitability. She froze, her garlands slipping from her hands, petals scattering across the trembling earth. Her heart raced, torn between fear and awe, for never had she seen a god so fierce, so commanding, so absolute. Hades reached out his hand. His voice was not loud, yet it carried with the weight of mountains. Come with me. Come to the realm where shadows dwell, where eternity breathes. You are meant for more than meadows and blossoms, Persephone. You are meant to reign beside me. Persephone's lips parted, but no words came. The chasm roared, the horses pawed at the air, and the scent of flowers was drowned by the scent of smoke and stone. Hades leaned forward, his arms strong, unyielding, and he drew her into the chariot. Her cry pierced the air, a cry so sharp that even Olympus heard. Demeter, far away, felt the sting in her heart. But the deed was done. With a command, Hades urged the horses forward. The chariot plunged into the abyss, darkness swallowing light, silence swallowing song. The earth closed behind them, sealing the meadow once more, leaving only scattered petals and the echo of vanished laughter. Yet the world remembered. The meadow was no longer bright. The nymphs fled in sorrow. And the flower that Persephone had touched, the strange, radiant blossom, withered instantly, curling into dust. Far below, the chariot thundered through tunnels of shadow. The walls glowed faintly with veins of fire, casting light on Persephone's pale face. Her eyes shimmered with tears, her hands clutched her chest, her heart beat wildly. Hades sat beside her, silent, solemn. He did not gloat. He did not sneer. He was calm like nightfall, like inevitability itself. When at last the chariot burst into the cavernous halls of the underworld, the shades of the dead trembled. Cerberus barked 3 mighty roars, the sound reverberating across rivers of darkness. The Furies shrieked in recognition. The rivers Styx, Lethe, Acheron, and Phlegethon surged with restless waves. For the queen of the underworld had arrived, though she had not yet claimed her crown. When Persephone vanished into the darkness, the world above grew suddenly still. The meadow stood silent, the petals she had dropped still trembling in the breeze. The nymphs, terrified, ran in all directions, their voices rising in cries that echoed through the hills. Yet no cry was louder than the one that rose unbidden from Demeter's heart. Far away, Demeter had been wandering the earth, watching the harvest ripen, blessing fields with golden grain. But at that moment, the very moment her daughter's cry cut through the air, her heart shuddered. It was a wound that no eye could see, but one she felt in the deepest marrow of her being. She stopped mid-step. Her hands grew heavy. Her sickle fell to the ground. "Persephone," she whispered. Her voice trembled, soft as a broken reed. The wind answered her with silence. At first she searched the meadows. She called out her daughter's name among the hills, her voice echoing against rocks and rivers. "Persephone, Persephone." But only the rustling grass and the distant cry of a bird answered. She combed through valleys, over mountains, into forests where shadows stretched long and deep. Yet no trace of her child remained. The sun passed overhead, then dipped low into the horizon. Still Demeter searched. Her feet grew blistered, her golden robes tattered by branches and brambles. Her crown of wheat fell loose, scattering kernels across the dirt. For 9 days and 9 nights she wandered ceaselessly, her heart breaking with every unanswered call. She carried torches in both hands, flames that did not fade, searching even in the darkest corners of the earth. Her tears mingled with rain, her cries mingled with thunder. No god dared approach her, no mortal dared offer comfort, for her grief was heavy as the earth itself. On the 10th day, weary and worn, she encountered Hecate, the goddess of crossroads, she who heard all things spoken in shadow. Hecate's pale face reflected sorrow, and in her hand burned a torch like Demeter's own. "Great goddess," Hecate whispered, "I heard the cry. I heard the sound of Persephone's voice as it rose into the heavens. But I did not see the hand that stole her away. For the act was veiled in shadow." Demeter's eyes, swollen with tears, blazed with a new determination. "If you did not see," she said, "then we must go to him who sees all. Helios, the sun, who looks upon every secret beneath the sky." Together, Demeter and Hecate climbed the eastern peak, where Helios rose each morning in his golden chariot. The god of the sun, crowned with fire, looked down upon them with eyes that missed nothing. "Tell me," Demeter demanded, her voice trembling with wrath and despair, "what has become of my child? Who has dared take Persephone from the light of day?" Helios looked upon her with pity. "Great Demeter," he said slowly, "you know I cannot lie, for the sun reveals all. It was Hades, lord of the Underworld, who seized her. He carried her in his black chariot, drawn by immortal horses, through the cleft in the earth. He has taken her to his realm below, where shadows dwell eternal." At his words, Demeter staggered. Her torch nearly fell from her grasp. Her knees buckled, her breath caught in her throat. Hades, her brother, her kin, had taken her only child. Her sorrow turned swiftly to fury. "Zeus knew," she whispered. "Yes, he knew. For nothing such as this happens without the will of the King of Gods." Helios, though unflinching, inclined his head in agreement. "Zeus has granted her to Hades, for he deemed it a worthy match. The queen of the underworld she will be, though her heart was never asked." Demeter's hands trembled. The earth beneath her trembled with her. Her grief became wrath, her sorrow became vengeance. "If my daughter is to dwell in shadow," she said, her voice like thunder rolling low, then the earth will share her fate. If Persephone cannot walk among the blossoms, then no blossom shall bloom. If she cannot taste the fruits of summer, then no fruit shall ripen. If she cannot see the sun, then the fields shall know no harvest. Let Zeus rule his heavens. Let Hades rule his shadows. But I will strip the earth bare. And so she did. The golden fields of wheat shriveled into dust. The vines of grapes withered on their stakes. The olive trees dropped their fruit, their leaves falling brittle as ash. The rivers ran thin, their beds cracking in the heat. The earth itself grew hollow, aching for her blessing. Mortals cried out in hunger. They fell upon barren fields, begging the gods for relief. But Demeter's heart was locked in stone. She heard only her daughter's voice, echoing still in her soul. The other gods grew restless. Poseidon watched the seas rise in storms, but no harvest came to feed sailors. Artemis looked upon forests that grew thin, the prey too weak to run. Even mighty Apollo saw the temples empty, for mortals were too weak to sing their hymns. At last, the cries of mortals reached Olympus itself. Zeus, seated upon his high throne, could no longer ignore the famine that spread across the world. The smoke of sacrifice no longer rose to the heavens. The voices of prayer grew silent. And with silence came weakness, for even gods depend on the honor of men. So Zeus called forth Hermes, swiftest of messengers, and bade him descend into the underworld. "Go to my brother," Zeus commanded. "Tell Hades the time has come. Persephone must return, or the earth itself will wither and die. And with it, the honor of the gods." The command of Zeus carried weight greater than mountains. And so Hermes, the messenger of the gods, prepared for the journey no other deity willingly took. With his winged sandals fastened to his feet and the staff of Caduceus in hand, he stepped lightly down from Olympus, his form gliding swift as the breath of the wind. He descended past clouds, past mountains, past rivers and valleys, until he reached the yawning chasm, the dark threshold that led into the realm of the dead. No bird sang there. No breeze stirred the grass. The very air seemed to hold its breath. Hermes, though swift and cheerful in the world above, grew solemn as he crossed into shadow. The torches at the gate flickered with a ghostly flame, casting pale light upon the black stone arch. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lifted his monstrous heads, growling low, his eyes burning like embers in the dark. But Hermes raised his staff, and with the authority of Zeus behind him, he spoke in calm command. "Be still, guardian. The King of the heavens has sent me. I come not as thief nor as foe, but as herald of his word." Cerberus growled once more, then sank back upon his haunches, watching silently as Hermes passed through. His eyes followed every step, but the messenger was unhindered. The underworld stretched vast and silent before Hermes' gaze. Shadows drifted like smoke over the ashen ground. The rivers of the dead flowed slow and endless. The Styx, the Lethe, the Acheron, each murmuring with the voices of countless souls. The cries of shades whispered faintly. But Hermes, keeper of souls and guide of the dead, moved with ease, for this realm too knew him. He glided past the ferryman Charon, whose skeletal hands gripped the pole of his boat. The old ferryman bowed in weary respect. "The herald of Olympus," he croaked, and rode silently on. Hermes pressed deeper still, his torchlight reflecting against walls of black stone, until at last he reached the great hall of Hades. There, upon a throne of obsidian, sat the lord of the underworld. Hades' form was stern, immovable, his mantle dark as night, his crown wrought from the minerals of the deep, his eyes, sharp as flint, glimmered with a fire not of anger, but of possession. At his side sat Persephone. Her face was pale, her gaze distant. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers twisting strands of her long hair, as though clinging to a fragment of the world above. She was adorned in a gown of silver gray, woven with threads that shimmered like the faintest starlight. Yet in her eyes lived both sorrow and strange strength, as if the shadows themselves had begun to weave into her spirit. Hermes paused at the threshold. The silence of that hall was deeper than the silence of the grave. At last he stepped forward, his voice clear, resonant, yet calm. Hades, son of Cronus, king of this realm of shadow, I come bearing the word of Zeus who rules the sky. The earth above lies barren. Mortals starve, temples grow silent, and Demeter weeps unceasingly for the daughter you have taken. Zeus commands, Persephone must return, for if she remains here, the world will wither, and with it all that honors the gods. Hades did not move. He sat upon his throne, his hand curled upon its arm as though carved from stone. For a long while he did not answer, and only the murmur of the river Styx filled the silence. Then slowly, he leaned forward. His voice, when it came, was low, steady, like the rumble of earth beneath a mountain. Brother Hermes, he said, you come swiftly as always, but tell me, is it theft to claim what has been granted? Zeus himself gave me Persephone as bride, for no queen could be more fitting than she, no soul more radiant to share my throne. Shall I be punished for what was permitted by the king of gods? Hermes met his gaze without flinching. You speak truth, Lord of shadows. But hear me still. Zeus now sees the suffering of mortals, and through their suffering, the weakening of Olympus. A kingdom of shades may endure famine, but the world of the living cannot. If Persephone remains forever below, Demeter will curse the earth until none survive. At these words, Persephone lifted her head. Her eyes, shadowed but still bright, met Hermes with a flicker of hope. She longed for the meadows, for the sunlight upon her face, for the laughter of streams and the warmth of her mother's embrace. And yet, something in her heart was divided, for in the stillness of the underworld, a strange bond had begun to root. She had seen the sorrow of shades, and felt the weight of her place at Hades' side. There was fear, yes, but also a seed of strength that surprised even her. Hades watched her closely. He saw the unspoken longing in her eyes, the delicate struggle between freedom and fate. His stern features softened, not in weakness, but in something like reluctant tenderness. Finally he spoke again. Very well. If Zeus commands, I shall not defy him. Persephone may return to her mother. But, and here his voice grew sharp, his words edged with a cunning resolve, know this, she has tasted the food of the dead. A seed of pomegranate has passed her lips, and by the law older than the gods themselves, any who eat of this realm are bound to it. She cannot remain forever in the world above. Hermes' brow furrowed. The words carried the weight of an ancient truth. Not even Zeus could unmake it. How long? Hermes asked softly. Hades leaned back upon his throne, his eyes never leaving Persephone's face. For part of the year she shall dwell with her mother, walking the fields, blessing the earth with her presence. But for the rest she shall return to me, to reign as queen of the underworld. Thus will the balance be kept. The earth shall not wither, the underworld shall not be robbed, and Persephone will belong to both worlds alike. Hermes bowed his head. So it shall be spoken. So it shall be carried to Zeus. Persephone's hands trembled in her lap. Her gaze fell to the cold stone beneath her, and then rose once more to Hermes. There was sorrow in her eyes, but also a quiet acceptance. Her fate was sealed not by force alone, but by the turning of an eternal law. Hermes turned, his sandals lifting him once again. The torches flickered as he passed. The shadows parted as though making way. Behind him, Persephone rose slowly, her silver gown whispering across the stone. Hades did not move to stop her. He simply watched, silent and still, his face unreadable, yet his eyes burning with an unspoken fire. Hermes' sandals whispered softly against the air, as he rose once more toward the surface world. Behind him followed Persephone, her form pale and radiant, a figure caught between two worlds. Each step she took seemed heavy, as if the shadows clung to her, reluctant to let her go. The gates of the underworld loomed tall and black, their stones older than time. Cerberus lifted his head once more, growling low. But when he saw Hermes guiding the queen, he fell silent, his tail sweeping the ground in uneasy rhythm. For the first time since her descent, Persephone crossed the threshold. The air of the living world rushed to meet her, bright, clean, warm. It filled her lungs like the first breath after drowning. Her eyes blinked against the sudden light, and for a moment, she thought she might faint. But Hermes steadied her, his hand light against her shoulder. "Take courage, daughter of Demeter," he whispered gently. "The path is long, but joy awaits at its end." High upon Olympus, Zeus awaited word, but it was not he who burned with longing. It was Demeter, who stood upon the fields, her feet bare against the cracked, barren soil. Her hair hung wild, her eyes were red with weeping, her hands clenched into fists of rage and sorrow. When at last she saw Persephone approaching, her cry pierced the air, a cry of both anguish and relief, the sound of a heart breaking and healing all at once. She ran across the fields, her robes tearing at the edges, and she fell upon her daughter, embracing her with such force that Persephone nearly stumbled to the ground. "Child, child, my beloved one," Demeter sobbed, pressing her face against Persephone's hair. "You are returned to me. Never again shall you leave my sight. The earth will bloom once more, and mortals shall rejoice. The famine is ended." But even as she spoke, Hermes raised his hand. "Demeter, goddess of grain, hear what must be said. Persephone has eaten of the fruit of the underworld. By ancient law, she cannot remain with you forever." Demeter's face turned pale as ash. Her hands tightened upon her daughter's arms, her eyes searching desperately for denial. But Persephone, silent and sorrowful, bowed her head in confirmation. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. At last Hermes spoke once more. "For part of the year, she will dwell with you, walking the fields and blessing the harvest. But for part of the year, she must return to Hades, to reign beside him as queen. Thus has the balance been decreed." Demeter's cry shook the earth. The mountains echoed it, the seas trembled at it, and even Olympus bent its head in grief. But when the storm of her sorrow at last subsided, she looked upon her daughter's face, and saw there not only loss, but a strange new strength. Persephone had walked through shadow, and returned with eyes that had seen eternity. Then so it shall be, Demeter whispered, though her voice was cracked and weary. When my daughter dwells with me, the earth shall bloom, flowers shall rise, fields shall swell with golden grain, and mortals shall eat their fill. But when she descends again to the dark, I shall withdraw my blessing. The fields shall wither, the trees shall cast their leaves, and frost shall claim the soil. Thus all shall know the cost of her absence. Persephone looked from her mother to the horizon. The wind lifted her hair, and she felt within herself the weight of her fate. She was no longer only maiden, no longer only daughter. She was queen as well, queen of the living flowers, and queen of the silent dead. Her life was divided, but her spirit was whole. And so it was that the seasons were born. When Persephone walked the earth, spring burst forth in wild celebration. The soil grew soft, the rivers ran full, and blossoms painted the meadows with endless color. Summer followed, fields heavy with harvest, air rich with warmth and song. But when the time came for her to return to Hades, the earth grieved with Demeter. Autumn swept across the land, leaves falling like tears upon the ground. Winter followed, silent, cold, and still, as though the world itself mourned the queen's absence. Yet always, when the appointed time had passed, the cycle began anew. Persephone rose again from the shadow, and the earth welcomed her with open arms. And so the eternal rhythm of life and death, of bloom and wither, of joy and sorrow, was bound into the turning of the year. Thus ended the tale of Persephone's abduction, not with victory nor defeat, but with balance. For Hades had his queen, Demeter had her daughter, and the world had its seasons. And in that balance, mortals learned a truth as old as the gods, that life is never only light, nor only darkness, but always the weaving of both. In the stillness of the underworld, there is a hall where no laughter is heard, no songs are sung, and no wind dares to stir the air. It is the hall of judgment, the place where every soul must stand, stripped of all titles, all wealth, all memory of power or pride. Here kings and beggars are equals. Heroes and cowards walk side by side. The great silence presses upon them all, and each soul feels the weight of eternity, settling upon their shoulders. At the far end of the hall rise 3 thrones, each carved not of gold or ivory, but of stone taken from the roots of the earth itself. Upon these thrones sit the 3 judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. Minos, once king of Crete, sits at the center, his presence calm but unshakable. In life he was known for wisdom, and in death that wisdom has only deepened. His gaze is steady, his voice is even, and when he speaks, it is as though the very stones of the hall lean closer to listen. He is the final arbiter, the one whose word cannot be overturned. Rhadamanthus, his brother, sits to his right. Where Minos is measured, Rhadamanthus is strict. In life he was famed for his justice, and in death he became the sternest guardian of law. No falsehood escapes his eye, no plea softens his judgment. To him right is right, wrong is wrong, and mercy has no place in the weighing of a soul. Aeacus III sits to the left. He was once the ruler of Aegina, beloved for his fairness and devotion. In the underworld, he is the gentlest of the 3. He listens with patience, his heart attuned to the quiet sorrows of the dead. When a soul trembles with regret, Iacchus is the one who sees it. When a spirit whispers of love or sacrifice, his ear is the first to hear. Together, these three form the unbreakable balance: severity, compassion, and final wisdom. No soul leaves their hall without a fate decreed. The process is slow, deliberate. One by one, souls step forward. Their lives are laid bare, not through words alone, but through visions conjured in the air. The deeds of mortals rise like smoke, unfolding scenes of joy and cruelty, of courage and betrayal. Every triumph, every failure, is revealed with merciless clarity. A thief may plead that hunger drove him to steal, and Iacchus will incline his head in understanding. But Rhadamanthus will see the faces of those wronged, and his judgment will fall like iron. Minos listens last, weighing the scales of both, and only when he speaks is the verdict complete. Some souls are led gently toward the meadows of asphodel, where they wander in quiet forgetfulness, neither punished nor rewarded. Others are guided toward the Elysian fields, where eternal light shines, and the blessed dwell in endless peace. And some, the darkest few, are dragged screaming into Tartarus, where chains and fire await, and the cries of the damned echo through the caverns of eternity. And above it all, upon his dark throne, Hades himself watches. He does not interfere, for the judgments belong to the three, but his presence fills the hall, silent, heavy, eternal. Every soul feels his gaze upon them, and knows that nothing can be hidden from the Lord of the dead. Among the endless procession of souls, there are some whose stories rise above the rest, names that mortals still whisper by firelight, cautionary tales woven into the tapestry of time. The hall grows quiet when such spirits are summoned, for their crimes or their virtues are etched deep into memory. The judges lean forward, their eyes glowing faintly with the light of justice, and the very walls of the underworld seem to listen. The first is Sisyphus, once a cunning king, clever beyond measure, but clever without conscience. He deceived the gods themselves, tricking Thanatos, the spirit of death, into chains so that mortals could not die. For a time, the world groaned under the weight of immortality, and even the fates could not cut their threads. When at last the order was restored, the fury of the gods was boundless. Sisyphus stood before the three judges, his tongue dripping with excuses, his eyes glittering with false charm. Iacchus listened, but shook his head. Rhadamanthus growled in anger, his hand tightening into a fist, and Minos spoke at last. You sought to outwit the gods, but in truth you only mocked yourself. Your punishment shall be endless labor, hope without fulfillment, striving without reward. And so Sisyphus was cast into Tartarus. There he was given a boulder, massive and cold, and commanded to push it up a steep hill. But whenever he neared the summit, the stone rolled back down, crushing his efforts, again and again. For all eternity, Sisyphus strained against the mountain. His sweat mingled with dust. His cries echoed in the darkness. But the task was never complete, and so his name became a symbol, a warning of endless futility. Next came Tantalus, once beloved of the gods, invited even to their feasts, but he repaid their favor with betrayal. He stole nectar and ambrosia, the food of immortality, and gave it to mortals. Worse still, in cruel arrogance, he slaughtered his own son, serving the flesh to Olympus as if to test their wisdom. The hall grew cold when his deeds were revealed. Rhadamanthus spat in disgust, his voice like thunder. Such blasphemy cannot be forgiven. And so Tantalus was condemned to a torment as cruel as his crime. He was chained in a pool of clear water, beneath branches heavy with ripe fruit. But whenever he bent to drink, the water receded. Whenever he reached for the fruit, the branches withdrew. Thirst and hunger gnawed at him endlessly, yet satisfaction was forever denied. Thus he stood, a figure of eternal longing, his name forever linked with unending torment. Then came Ixion, a mortal who dared dream beyond all mortal bounds. Welcomed once into Olympus, he betrayed the sacred trust of the gods, seeking to lie with Hera herself. Zeus, wise to his deceit, crafted a phantom cloud in Hera's likeness, and Ixion, blinded by lust, was ensnared by his own folly. When his crime was revealed, the gods turned from him in revulsion. The judges spoke his sentence with no hesitation. You sought to dishonor the throne of Olympus. Your desire was fire, and so fire shall consume you. Ixion was bound to a great flaming wheel, spinning endlessly across the void. Day and night, the wheel turned without pause, its flames licking his flesh, its motion never ceasing. His screams echoed faintly even into the mortal world, a warning of hubris without end. And yet, not all judgments were of punishment. Some souls came trembling with regret, others with lives of quiet virtue. Farmers who toiled honestly, mothers who loved faithfully, warriors who fought with honor. They too stood before the judges. For these Aeacus often smiled softly, and Minos would nod in approval. They were guided past the shadows, through fields of whispering reeds, and into the Elysian fields. There golden light bathed the meadows, breezes carried the scent of blossoms, and the souls of the blessed found eternal rest. They sang, they laughed, they walked beneath trees that never withered. Their eternity was not punishment, but peace, the reward for lives lived in harmony. Through these judgments, the truth of Hades' realm was revealed. It was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was not the rage of a tyrant. It was balance, a mirror held to every soul, reflecting exactly what they had been. In the stillness of his throne, Hades watched. He did not gloat over torment, nor did he weep over sorrow. His was the calm of inevitability, the certainty that justice, once spoken, cannot be undone. The mortals feared his name, but in truth, his presence was not of malice. It was of order. He was the final boundary, the guardian of law older than Olympus itself. And in his silence, the dead found the peace of knowing that nothing more could be taken from them. Thus the story of Hades comes to its close. From his birth among the children of Cronus, to the great war of the Titans, to his solemn throne in the underworld, his tale is one of inevitability. He did not seek power, yet power was given to him. He did not crave worship, yet mortals spoke his name in trembling. He did not wage wars, yet his realm was vaster than all kingdoms combined. For Hades is not destruction, but balance, not cruelty, but consequence, not absence, but the quiet presence that waits for all. As Persephone moves between worlds, seasons bloom and fade. As the judges weigh the souls of men, justice endures. And as Hades sits upon his throne of obsidian, the cosmos itself breathes in rhythm. Life above, rest below, and between them, the steady hand of the unseen king. So, when thunder rolls, mortals look to Zeus. When the seas rage, They call to Poseidon. But when night falls, and silence deepens, every heart feels the truth of Hades. He is there in the whisper of the grave. He is there in the stillness after the last breath. He is there in the quiet promise that all things return to balance. And though his throne is hidden, and his crown is shadow, his kingdom is eternal. Hades, son of Cronus, lord of the underworld, judge of all, and keeper of balance, forever he reigns, silent, unshaken, the eternal king of shadows.